All right, well, I noticed on your website that you have ocean-friendly tips. Can you share those tips with me? And do you teach those to the kids when you take them into the water?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So, firstly, I think it's important for people to realize that when it comes to plastics and waste, there is no away. You can't throw it away. So we need to really think of how much we use and reuse and not use. That's a big one. And I think here in South Africa, we're still quite big culprits when it comes to bad waste management. So one is don't litter and be careful to use plastic. Second one is know your fish. Like what we're eating, we should know where it's coming from. Most of the fish species and fish stocks are overfished. So it's good to know if you're going to eat a fish where he's coming from, how his family's doing, and whether there's enough of them left for it to be viable.
Yeah.
So know your fish, that's a big one. And then thirdly, also, we think that the carbon problem is just around sea levels rising and, you know, it's something very vague. But the reality is that the ocean is one of our biggest carbon sponges. So if we overuse and overcreate carbon, we're going to have huge problems in the ocean called ocean acidification. Wow. So being aware of that is actually directly affecting our oceans as well.
Now, Hanley, the tips you were mentioning there, the ocean-friendly tips, do you find a lot of people actually know these things, or do you find that the information is available, or do we need to really kind of ramp up this information?
I think we do need to ramp up, and I think it's also about finding local solutions, you know, because what I shared is very general, but I think in specific countries and specific regions, certain things are more pertinent. So I definitely think so. I think one of the perception problems with the ocean is that it's so big. And so people look on the shore and they look out and they say, how can something that large possibly be at risk? We just think that the size makes it safe. And that's a really dangerous misconception because it's really fragile and really threatened, even though it's so large. So I definitely think that we have to rethink how we think about the oceans and think of them more as a fragile state as opposed to this vast, powerful, which it is as well, but not always.
When you say it's at risk, what do you mean?
I mean that there are so many threats on our oceans, you know, from overfishing to pollution to the ocean acidification to climate change, that it's not doing as well as we'd like to think it is. And it's hard to accept that because we don't like big problems. But I think that we're in a time and an age where we have everything at hand to solve big problems. We haven't had that before. We have enough information, we have enough research, we have enough reach through media to actually make a change. So in a way, we're in a bit of a sweet spot. We can actually make a difference, whereas before we couldn't. So even though the challenges are big, I think the solutions are there and the way to achieve them are there.
Now I want to talk about sustainable fish. You mentioned that we should know where our fish is coming from, how his family is doing. How do we actually get that information? How do we know where our fish is coming from? Because if I go to the supermarket and I buy a fish off the shelf, I think he's just come from the shelf.
Totally. Exactly. A shellfish as opposed to a reef fish. Absolutely. Well, in South Africa, we are lucky to have the WWF SASSY campaign that's done a lot of work, and the Sustainable Seafood Initiative under WWF have done fantastic work on mapping the different species that we eat, where they come from and how they're fished. And it's a very easily labeling system of red, orange and green.
And we should always eat green.
And we should always eat green. We should never eat red. We should actually confront those who sell red. And orange, we need to be careful with the decisions we make. So I think that you can, for example, get hold of a little brochure at many different stores. Pick and Pay, Woolworths are all involved. There's an app for the phone, and there's also a website. There's even a fish SMS that you can SMS the name of the fish. So you can SMS King Clip to the number, and you'll get an SMS back telling you, you know, this is the state, etc. And I mean, I think one can have good conversations around with that with restaurateurs or shop owners and be like, hey, you should be careful. You're selling a red fish, and you know, I could blow the whistle on this kind of thing. And they usually take it seriously, and I think one can do it in a way without alienating people.